I'm Lisa from Teach Mom Learn, and today I am going to attempt to make a video with my toddler on my lap, but we don't know how long this will last. So today, yes, Mama is going to talk. Yes, and you do have a plant. That's Rosie. Yeah. That's Trees. You're being so cute. That's a kitty. What does a kitty say? Was it? Yeah. Do you like sitting with Mama? Okay. So we are coming to the end of what has definitely been the strangest school year any teacher's ever had. With birds. Whether you were remote, hybrid, or a mix of all three, this is definitely a year that no teacher or parent or student actually is ever going to forget. This year taught us a lot about flexibility, it taught us patience, it taught us that we can definitely learn many new things. Yeah, it taught us words like asynchronous that I think we all hope we never hear again. But most of all, it taught us to be patient with ourselves. I think this year was especially hard for first-year teachers because you didn't have something to compare it to. It wasn't the kind of year that you could look back on and think of as a normal struggle because nothing about this time frame has been normal. Today, I want to share with you the 9 things that I wish I knew as a first-year teacher in hopes that this video helps new teachers learn what to expect in the classroom a little bit more than grad school will tell them, and in hopes that first-year teachers watching this will realize that the year they just had is not the normal and that things get much better. Much better. The number one thing I want new teachers to know is that even the most experienced teachers never stop learning. We constantly learn new things all the time from each other, from our students, from our admin, from district initiatives, and honestly, today I even learned that I could use paper clips to hold my hair up when I had no bobby pins. So the lessons are endless. The first lesson I want to share today is that parent communication is key. Parent communication is one of those things that's especially intimidating to a new teacher because you want to make a good impression and you're also a little bit nervous about it. The thing to remember with parent communication is that you all have the same goal, which is to help the student be successful. I've been truly lucky to have the parents that I've worked with. They've been supportive, they've been kind, they've been caring, and we've been almost always on the same page about what's best for their child. The key to a successful relationship with the parents in your classroom is open communication and using effective communication strategies. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got for parent communication was that if it's longer than a paragraph, make it an email. I love that advice because it really makes you think about your communication. If you're writing some long-winded explanation about something simple going on in your classroom, really think about it, cut it down, and make your communication more effective. However, if the topic that you're discussing really does warrant more than a paragraph, it's worth a phone call home. The parents appreciate the directness, and it's much easier to talk about sensitive issues voice to voice or face to face instead of in writing because then it's much easier to interpret tone. If you're in a situation where you need some kind of a paper trail, simply send the parent a follow-up email after your call. Tell them how much you enjoyed your conversation with them and list out the bullet points of what is being done and what needs to be done next. My next piece of advice for parent communication is to focus on what the student really needs. So when a student is misbehaving in the classroom or having some kind of issue, often we need to reach out to parents, administrators, and other team members to make a plan. It's easy to get frustrated when students are doing something that is inherently frustrating. However, it's important to remember that as their teacher, you're there to figure out what's going on and to try to help them solve it and work through it. When a student's having frustrating behaviors, take a step back and ask yourself, is this normal for the student? What might be the causes of this behavior? What might really be going on to make the student act out? Having worked in a behavioral program in the past, I am a strong believer in the idea that there's no such thing as a bad kid. There's only a child who's struggling, who's trying to communicate that with you in the best way that they know how. As teachers, we're only with students for about 6 hours a day, at most. And we can't fix everything in our students' lives, but what we can do is give them an environment where they feel safe and valued. If your students know that you care about them and that even if they act out, you'll still care about them and that you'll still want them to be successful, they're much more willing to be invested in what you're teaching them. They'll know that they have at least one adult in their life to rely on. And as a bonus, I've personally found over the years that when students know that I care about them, they're much more willing to work hard and do what they need to do to be successful. Ray is back. So one last little piece of advice for parent communication. When you're sending a good news email, put good news in the subject line. Most of the time the parents get emails from school, it's either newsletters, something asking them to do something, or some kind of a problem. When you put good news right in the subject line, they're going to be so excited to open it, and it's just going to start everything off with a great tone. Tip number 2 is to give yourself time to adjust. I don't know about you, but I thought that by my 8th year of teaching, I would be able to walk in September, be totally adjusted, and be ready for whatever the world threw at me. That's not the case. As an experienced teacher, I generally give myself the first quarter to get adjusted to a new school year and a new group of students and a new group of lessons. However, as a new teacher, it's totally normal to take even up to 2 years to fully adjust to being in a new district. The first year, you're learning the ins and outs of your new district and you're going through all the traditions for the first time. The second year, you go through it all again, but you actually have the presence of mind to take it all in. And new teachers aren't the only ones who need to adjust. All teachers need at least a quarter to adjust to a new school year, new students, potentially a new classroom, and the new district initiatives. Going into a new school year feeling like you have everything under control is great. And you should try to control everything you can. Have your lessons and your syllabi ready to go for the first couple weeks. Make sure that you know what kind of routines you want to start on the very first day, but don't expect yourself to be perfectly prepared for everything that gets thrown at you. So my third lesson is to leave work at work That's a beautiful song! My third lesson is to leave work at work whenever you can, or as I prefer to put it, you are allowed to have a life. Teaching can easily become an all-consuming job. There's lesson planning, there's papers to grade, there's other paperwork to do, but then there's also the fact that we definitely take our kids home with us. Your students become your kids throughout the course of the school year, and so they're on your mind all the time. I don't know about you, but I can't look at a website or go to a store or see anything without thinking about one of them and something that they enjoy. My husband and I are both teachers, so we've spent so many dinners discussing students and professional development and district initiatives and the paperwork that we have to do. And it became very hard to set that boundary of being at work and being at home because we were almost treating each other like coworkers and basically consulting on how to manage challenges for each other. Having work at work is hard in any job, but it's especially hard in a job where you're so connected to the people that you work with. We become so emotionally invested in our students' success that it's hard not to think about them all the time. To help you stay in the moment after a day at school and be present for your family and friends, or just be present by yourself, I have a few tips that might help. One idea is to set a time limit for how long you can talk about work. Having a set time helps you focus on what's actually important and what's actually worth sharing instead of just rambling about your day. I've also found that listening to a podcast on the way home from work is a great way to focus on your own interests and almost reset your mind. By the time you get home, work isn't your sole focus, and so you're able to focus a little bit more on your family. Another idea is to start your afternoon with some kind of movement. Go for a walk, go for a run, exercise, whatever you need to do, because once again, that resets your mind and helps you if you're stuck on something from the workday. And lastly, if there's something that you really need to finish, stay late and finish it at work. That way, by the time you get home, you can actually be home and enjoy yourself instead of worrying about something that you have to do. Ray's basically going to be in and out of this video whenever she wants because we just want her to be happy today. Tip number 4 is don't schedule anything right after work. This is super basic advice, but it still took me 3 years to figure it out. If you schedule something right after work, inevitably you're going to get caught up in school bus traffic, parent traffic, children on bike traffic, and you are never going to get there on time. You're going to be super stressed out, and by the time you get to where you're going, you're not even going to enjoy whatever it was that you were supposed to do. If you need to schedule an after-school appointment, give yourself a 20 to 30 minute cushion so that you can let the parking lot empty and take your time getting where you need to go. Or ask your boss if you can leave a couple minutes early to beat the traffic. Most of the time, our administrators understand that we are human and we do have things that we need to do that sometimes happen during the school day. Tip number 5 is to let the students guide you. One of the things that it took me a while to learn as a teacher is that I am not the sole person in control of my classroom. So some days everything goes perfectly according to plan, your lessons are amazing, the kids are invested, and everything is great. And then there's the days where nothing goes according to plan, nothing gets accomplished, and you leave wondering how you just got hit by basically a student tornado. Most of your days are going to fall in between those two extremes. When students are unfocused, it works much better to acknowledge it than to just keep going with your lesson as if nothing's going on. Because in reality, once one student's unfocused, the rest become unfocused as well. You have a couple options, and the first thing you can do is to do some kind of exercise to get your class moving and kind of reset them. If your students are able to refocus, that's awesome. You can jump right back into your lesson like nothing even happened. But some days they're not going to be able to focus. And on those days, instead of forcing them to do something that they're not going to get anything out of, it's better to just go with it. Use the time to build rapport with them, play games, talk to them about their lives, get to know them better. And honestly, those are going to be the days that they remember. So yes, you may not have gotten to your lesson, but you can work around that and make it up later. The same advice goes for when a lesson that you've carefully planned doesn't work. And believe me, this has happened to me plenty of times. I've thought that I have invented the best lesson ever and my students are going to love it, and then they hate it. So in those moments, just move on to something new, because if they hate it that much, they're not going to get anything out of it anyway. Sometimes the discussions that happen when you throw your plans out the window actually end up being the most valuable and rapport building ones. I probably have 2 minutes to finish this video before my toddler realizes that I'm gone and has a complete meltdown, so I'm going to go as fast as I can. Tip number 6 is to keep a joy jar. If you've never kept one before, basically what it is a jar or a notebook or any other vessel that you can fill with positive things from the school year. I try to do this every year in my classroom, and to be honest, some years I've forgotten, but the years that we remember it, it's awesome. What you do is you write down the good things that happen, the funny things students say, and the things you want to remember from the year as it's going, because trust me, you will forget by June. Get the students involved by placing whatever you choose to use in a central location and having paper and pencils nearby. Be intentional about it, shout out Joy Jar anytime you want them to add something to it, and they'll pick up on it and start shouting it out as well. Try it out for a year and see if you like it, but I have to say that looking back in June with the students about all the great things that happened over the course of the year is an awesome experience. Tip number 7 is another really basic piece of advice that it still took me years to learn. When you have a mistake in a lesson plan, whether it's a typo or a number or mess up with your answer key, go back and fix it right away, because trust me, you're going to forget the second that your lesson's done. Tip number 8 is to use your personal time and to go to work sick. So I don't know how it works in your district, but in my district, and I think in my whole state, teachers get 3 personal days a year. My first couple of years, I was way too afraid to take them, and so I just left them sitting there. This year I've used all 3, partially because I have a child. But here's the thing, you don't get any kind of a prize by having leftover personal days at the end of the school year. You don't get compensated for them, at least in my district, and so leaving them sitting there is just failing to take advantage of a benefit that you've earned. Teachers have this thing where they feel like they need to come to school every single day, and while you absolutely should be going to school most days, you should not be going in when you're sick. We have this mentality that if we're not there, our students will be lost, our lessons won't get done, and sometimes it's harder to plan than it is to just go in and tough through a day of taking a lot of Advil and drinking a ton of Gatorade. But let's be honest here, you don't want to spread your germs to your students, and you don't want them to bring it home. I've had a huge problem with taking sick days in the past. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd feel a little bit under the weather, but I'd feel like I could totally get through the day. And then 11 o'clock rolls around, I felt horrible, and trying to find coverage for my classes was so much harder because I hadn't just called in the morning. So do yourself and whoever the subcaller in your district is a huge favor and just call out to begin with. Last but not least, make an effort to put yourself out there and make teacher friends. Teaching is one of those jobs that's really baptism by fire. You can go through grad school, you can go through student teaching, but nothing really compares to being in charge of your own classroom. Make it a point to seek out people in your department and in your grade level. It's because they've been there longer, they will have good advice, and teachers are generally pretty willing to share. I know I love sharing my resources with new teachers because I want to help make their transition easier than mine. Learn everything you can from these people, but also realize that what works for them might not work for you. You're a different person with a different teaching style, and so you're going to do things a little bit differently. Take the good, but don't be afraid to make changes. Over time, you're going to make friends anyway because you're all working so closely together that it's really hard not to connect with people. You'll meet teacher friends in the hallways, on your duties, or even just sitting through faculty meetings together. Teacher friends are special. They're the only people who truly understand the chaos and joy that comes with teaching because they go through it every day too. They're the people that you can text with your random hilarious stories from your students and they'll totally get how great they are. I'm so grateful for my teacher friends. We've been through so much together, especially now with COVID, and I would be lost without their support, their mentorship, their kindness, and their compassion. Over the years, they've become my friends, my mentors, my confidants, and my candy suppliers, which is a very valuable thing when you work in school. I'd be truly lost without them, and I'm so grateful that I have them. I hope this video is helpful for new teachers and even experienced teachers because, like I said, we're all still learning constantly. Please share the lessons that you wish you knew as a first-year teacher or the questions you have in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video or videos about taking teacher techniques and using them at home with your children, please subscribe to my channel. See you next week.